Hello and welcome to the Persona Project. My name is Laura Sheeran. I am a multidisciplinary artist from Ireland. I release music under the name Persona, and I'm making this series to document the most creatively ambitious project I have ever embarked on. 4 albums, 4 stage shows, 4 personas, and 1 year to prepare. This project isn't just about music. It's about identity, transformation, and digging into all of the things that really make us human. If you'd like to follow along, you can find me on YouTube, Substack, Instagram, Patreon, or wherever you get your podcasts. Let's get into the episode.
Hello, welcome to episode 2 of the Persona Project. I am kind of floored by the response that I got to the last episode. So before we go into the episode at all, I just want to welcome new subscribers, both on Substack and YouTube in particular. I think on YouTube, I'm getting kind of close to 1,000 subscribers, which I just was not expecting that to happen. So welcome. Okay, so in this episode, mainly we're looking at the visual language for the first album, and that includes the costume design, sewing them, all in preparation for the photoshoot, for the album photography. All of that process really facilitated a lot of excavation, I guess, into who this persona really is. And we go pretty deep with it. I'm not going to lie. It's very personal. I think a lot of it is very personal, but it's honest and it's the truth. And, it's what it is. This one probably is one to watch on YouTube just because there's a lot of visual material in this episode and it really gives a broader picture of the world that is being built. So enjoy.
Don't know where songs come from. They bubble up, coming to me when I'm between awake and dreaming.
So, how was the Dreamer persona born? Well, the Dreamer is the first of 4 personas that are part of this broader project. Each persona has its own album of songs. The album of the Dreamer is going to be the first one, which will be released early in 2006. When I was going through all of the songs and choosing which ones belonged together, I grouped them purely based on instinct, didn't really think too much about it. And once the songs had been chosen, I started to look at that music a bit closer and work out who that voice was and where that voice came from. The song lyrics became the main source of information in helping me to define the characteristics of the persona. It was a character that was already very much there. I didn't think my way to building the character from scratch. It was more a process of sitting with the music, sitting with the songs and the words, and just listening and observing what was already there, giving it definition.
Awake and dreaming.
In the songs on the album, the Dreamer is someone who is eternally curious about the world. She's idealistic. She inhabits the world of fantasy. She has a very vivid imagination. She's a lover, but she's kind of in love with the idea of love. She believes in the all-powerful force of romance. She kind of believes in a romantic utopia. But because of this, she's constantly hitting up against a wall and she's hurting a lot because her fantasies keep on colliding with reality. And no matter how much she wishes things could be this beautiful, perfect experience or love or relationship,
the magic of her idealism keeps on getting broken and fractured. These characteristics became the starting point for me. I was able to start building the mythology of the character, the visual world, all of that. I would soon find myself on a much, much deeper journey of discovery, which I'm going to get into later in this video. But first, I'm going to talk a bit about the costume design and how I began to create the visual identity for the character. I work in a very intuitive way. At this stage, my choices were being influenced a little bit by the character and, the qualities and the tone of the character. But there was also a heavy influence that was coming from the music itself, the instrumentation and the sonic textures. There's a lot of recurring sounds such as harp and layered vocals and strings and all of these beauty, dreamy, lovely stuff. In my head, all of those sounds kind of come with their own set of visual associations. So when I listen to those sounds, I start imagining certain visual textures. The fabrics that I was drawn towards were definitely a direct reflection of those associations. Beautiful, translucent fabrics. These fabrics that are kind of barely there. There was 2 layers of processing going on. There was the character and there was the sound. I was interpreting both of those influences into a visual aesthetic. And then I got to start designing. So I knew what fabric I was going to be using, of course, and I knew generally the aesthetics that I was leaning into. But I didn't have a clear idea of an actual design until I started really sketching things out. I realized from the start that I definitely wanted to make 2 costumes. One that represented daydreaming, and one that represented nighttime dreaming and the nocturnal realm of dreams. So I went with navy blue and rich blue colors for night dreaming, obviously. And then for the daydreaming look, I wanted to make a garment that was very, very layered, but still be almost completely see-through if I could. Like, you could almost not tell where the garment was hanging off the body or where it was emerging from. A force field of fabric around the body itself. I knew I was going to be working with really delicate fabrics as well, so I didn't want to make something that had a lot of seams or a lot of joins or too much form. I wanted to let the fabric fall and be loose. Once I had the 2 main garments taken care of, I wanted to make something that could be added to the costume if I wanted to, but something that wasn't going to be a permanent feature of the costume. So I designed, I guess you could call it a cape.
One side I had navy satin and pink satin on the other side. And I made it reversible, so it can work with both the daydreaming or the night dreaming costume. And I went with this extremely long fringing. I wanted it to add movement and a sense of dynamism. I have always loved long hair, and I love my black bob. I don't want to change it anytime soon, but I really wanted the dreamer persona to have long blonde hair. And I had been picturing a headpiece that connected to the wig in a way that there were jewels kind of cascading down from the headdress down into the wig, so that you couldn't tell where the headdress ended and where the hair began. And I got pretty close to creating it, I think. Midway through, I realized that apparently I had been drawn towards the visual aesthetic of a halo. But I was kind of curious about this. Definitely was not for religious reasons. I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to keep the headdresses. But it was definitely worth doing as part of the process. I'm still on the fence, but please do let me know what you think in the comments. Do you like the headdresses? Would you like to see them in the photos? A lot of questions have been coming up since I started the Persona project. Are these personas made up? Or are they parts of me? And if they are parts of me, why are they there? Where did they come from? What function did they serve in my life? Looking at the dreamer in the songs, at least, she's fantasizing about what will be, what could be, and rewriting what was. This is the daydreamer, the fantasist, the idealist. But there's also the nocturnal dreamer, and that's a completely different landscape. She goes deep into her subconscious, and she's finding all kinds of truths. When I space out and start peeling back layers and layers, I think a lot of this part of myself definitely comes from my mom. And this is where things started to get a little, okay, here we go. We're lifting the lid off something. One of the very early memories I have of my mom is of her lying with me while I was struggling to sleep. And as she lay there, she started describing how I could always try astral traveling. She told me this was something that she used to do when she was a young kid, in order to find peace from her environment. She was able to fly off. She would leave her body and she would just go floating up through her dreams, over the ether, into outer space, into the stars, through different worlds and different galaxies. Now, that memory of my mom really encapsulates for me the essence of who Mom was. She really lived in a world that was part here and part there. She didn't just see the world that way, she felt the world that way. She really believed in magic. In many ways, this side of her was one of the most beautiful parts of who she was. But it left her very vulnerable to manipulation and being taken advantage of. This presented itself in many different ways in her life. That is a story for a different day. Some of the things that Mom used to say to me were wild. She would tell me that we had incarnated together before in previous lives. She had memories of previous incarnations, and she had visions of future incarnations. This was just how she navigated the world, and, she really wanted me to navigate the world that way too. Because of that influence on my growing brain, it was kind of hard for me at times to understand what was real and what wasn't real. You know, like psychic visions were presented as fact, and they impacted our day-to-day in very real ways. So I never knew where the line was between creativity or fantasy or spiritual beliefs or like full-on delusion. And as a naturally creative person, this led me to have a long fascination with that aspect of creativity where you can see things that aren't there, you can imagine things that don't exist yet. You can create something that doesn't exist. But when does that belief or when does that vision become a delusion? And when does it become unsafe? When does it become destabilizing? Where's the tipping point where you lean too far into that and you start to lose grip? Someone recently pointed out to me that it's important to be able to make the distinction between the imagination and the imaginary. The imagination is such a key aspect of being an artist and being a creative human being. We love the imagination. Identifying all of this and making these links and, peeling back all these layers, I'm seeing it very much as owning now as an adult what I know I have inherited from my mom that earlier in my life was scary and overwhelming. As artists, we have to be able to connect with that part of ourselves, and we have to be able to let go, and we have to be able to lean into fantasy. And it's a beautiful place to be. It doesn't have to be overwhelming, and it doesn't have to get out of control. And I think the main mission of this persona is to give me the chance to harness that and to reclaim that and to create a safe container for my imagination and my wildest dreams that's not going to bubble over, that's not going to get out of control, that's safe. Well, I've opened the lid on it now. And there's plenty more digging to do. But yeah, I think that's enough unpacking for today.